Welcome back to GasDiesel Garage, everyone. In today's episode, this next patient, is a 20-year-old Toyota rav4. It's got a few issues. A friend of mine wanted me to go through it, inspect it, check it all out so it can be roadworthy again. But the biggest thing that it's got a p0758 code and a p0773 code, and those are transmission codes. This thing goes nowhere in first gear, so we're going to diagnose that today. So stay tuned. Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the codes out of that ECU. The only way to do that is hook it up with the scanner. Once you retrieve the codes out of the computer, of course, go to internet, or if you got a book that'll tell you the codes, Here are two brief descriptions of these codes, p0758 and the p0773. Now, what I like to do after I retrieve the codes is I like to check the transmission fluid to see where that level is at. And the only way to do that on these cars is that you got to start the car and check it while it's running. Actually, it looks pretty clean. Yeah, right at the correct level. Now you can access the transmission pan by just sliding up under there without jacking it up, but I like to have a lot of room when I'm working underneath the vehicle, just because. Once you got everything off of the front and it's up in the air, next thing you're going to want to do is take that brush guard off, because then we can access the pan, which is right there. See how it's covering half of it? Now that we got full access to the transmission pan, we can start draining the fluid by the drain plug right there. Now the drain plug is a 10mm Allen head. Now we'll just sit there and let that drain a little bit. Now in order to drop the pan, you got to take off the 17 10mm bolts that are holding it on. All the way around. Just a mechanic tip for those of you that are attempting to do a transmission pan or oil pan or any type. You're like me and I make a mess. Throw down some dry sweep before you make a mess. It's less of a cleanup. Now what we're going to do is pull the filter off. Which would be two 10mm bolts. Just give it a little tug. Oops, sorry, there's one more. My fault. 3 bolts. Just let that come down. Just like this. Now that we got the shift solenoids out of the transmission, let's bench test them to see if they work. Now these particular shift solenoids, the casing is ground because it only has one wire. So let's hook up a ground to it. We should hear that shift solenoid clicking. That one passed shift solenoid number 2. Same thing as one before. The casing is ground because it only has one lead. Let's see if we can hear something. Well, no clicking at all. That's just my power probe clicking, but got 12 volts to it. Fortunately, that's your bad one. Time to replace them. One thing we need to do when we take this, the shift solenoids out is that we need to measure the ohms. Measure the resistance of it. See where we're at. Take the old one, the bad one that's in question, because the casing is ground, and that's the positive at the connector. Let's see. So we put the negative lead on the casing, put the positive lead. Alright, we got 12.8 ohms. Okay. Don't know if that's good or not. We have to figure that out, but we can research it. 12.8 ohms on that one. And we know that one's working because we were clicking it. We were jumping it. Okay. Negative on the casing. Positive on the. Alright, 13.3 ohms. Okay. Well, it must be good because that's clicking. We power probed it. Right. So let's get the new one out. Right. Here's the new one. That's the old one we just tested. Let's see what this ohms out to. Like I said, negative on the casing. Let me get a better shot for you. Positive on the terminal. And that's 13.3 ohms. Same amount of ohms this was at. Now the old one, I'll even try it again. Now I'm sure that's not in spec, but we're gonna find out. Now the next thing we need to do before we install those shift solenoids, we need to check out that wire harness, ohm out the wires. Right? Take your positive lead, since they're case grounded to the transmission, we should have about 16 ohms. Yeah, I believe that's right. Take the other one, ground your test lead to the transmission, should have about 16 ohms. So far we're in good shape. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to check for voltage. So make sure you turn that ignition on so we can get some power. So take the first one, put your positive lead on that, case grounded to the transmission on the negative lead, put your positive lead on that, case grounded to the transmission on the negative lead, should have about 11-12 volts. Okay, take the next one, ground your lead, should have 11 or 12 more volts. So everything's checking out. So let's put all this stuff back together and go from there. And anytime you're working with the transmission, you drop the pan, it's good practice to replace the transmission filter, because a clogged up one of these will cause a lot of issues and problems. You put the wire harnesses back where they go, so they're not dangling. Now it's time to put that pan back on. Anytime you install a shift solenoid, you're going to want to make sure that the codes were cleared. So let's make sure they're cleared now. All right. Well, no check engine light so far. That's a good thing. Let's go to current codes. No codes present. Well, looks like we fixed it. Okay, I take that back. The real test is actually taking it for a test drive. Make sure the transmission's shifting. Make sure no check engine light pops up. So let's do that now. Looks like it's shifting to me.